Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad, organized jointly by the Association for Cultivation, the Academy of Research for Cultivation of Indian Sciences, and Kavikulaguru Kalidas Sanskrit University, Ramtek, jointly within the ambit of the certificate course on consciousness studies and self-awareness. We have the same eminent speaker with us, Swami Atmapriyananda Ji Maharaj, the Pro-Chancellor of Ramakrishna Mission, Vivekananda University, Kolkata. I request Maharaj to start his discourse once he joins.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. That Supreme Brahman is infinite, and this manifested world as Brahman is also infinite. And when the infinite Brahman manifests as this world, infinite alone remains. Om, peace, peace, peace. So Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad, as we said, is a very vast text. And there is a very important chapter in the Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad, and this comes twice. One is in the second chapter, in the fourth Brahmana, Dvitiya Adhyaya, Chaturtha Brahmana, second chapter, fourth section. And again, the same thing is repeated in Chaturtha Adhyaya, Panchama Brahmana, fourth chapter, fifth section. This is a dialogue between Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi. Yajnavalkya Maitreyi Samvada forms an extraordinarily important section of the Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad. You should remember that these rishis were married people. They were not sannyasins per se, as we now understand this term, but they were men of God. The distinction between sannyasa and garhasthya, renunciation and living in the householder's ashrama, this distinction did not exist in the Vedic times. There were men of renunciation. They were paramahamsas, parivrajakas, peripatetic monks, avadutas, mendicant monks, ascetics. But the idea of sannyasa in an organized fashion came much later, thanks to Buddha. Buddha had the Sangha, and he conceived the Sangha itself as a personification of the truth of the Buddha. Buddham sharanam gacchami, dharmam sharanam gacchami, sangham sharanam gacchami. The Trivida Sharana, I take refuge in Buddha, I take refuge in the teachings of Buddha, the Dharma, and I take refuge in the Sangha, the organization through which the teachings of Buddha take a concrete form. So these are the three aspects of the Buddhistic organization. Shankaracharya later organized the Sannyasa Sampradaya into Dashanami Sampradaya, the tenfold divisions. Yajnavalkya was one of the greatest rishis. He is a hero of the Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad. And he had two wives, Maitreyi and Katyayani. Maitreyi is a Brahmavadini, and Katyayani was an ordinary Stri Pragya, is mentioned, just a simple, innocent, pure woman, content to follow the husband. Now, Yajnavalkya decided that he had had enough of this worldly life. He had huge wealth. He was constantly being sponsored by King Janaka because he was holding and running a huge Gurukula. You should remember that this great wisdom of the Vedas and the Upanishads lived in the Guru Griha. Gurukula or Guru Griha Vasa means the disciple will live in close proximity with the illumined Guru who was Shrotriya Brahmanishtha. Shrotriya, well versed in the Vedas, the Shruti, and Brahmanishtha, absorbed and devoted to Brahman. 5 important qualities have been mentioned for the Guru. Who is a Guru? An ideal Guru. He should be Shrotriya, Brahmanishtha, Avrijina, Akamahata, Paramakarunika. Look at each one of these. Is Shrotriya, extremely well versed in the Shruti, in the Vedas. Brahmanishtha, devoted to Brahman and devoted to the study of the Vedas, constantly updating his knowledge. Brahma could mean the Supreme Brahman, or Brahma also means the Vedas. Avrijina is nishpapa, sinless. What is sin? In the Vedic lore, commercialization of knowledge is called sin. Now, even spiritual people charge hugely for the knowledge that they're imparting to their followers and disciples. The tragedy of the modern times is that the gurus, spiritual people, yogis, they also have turned highly commercial. Some money is required for running the Gurukula, of course, but if it exceeds limits and becomes commercialized as knowledge, it's called a sin. The Guru doesn't charge the disciple because the knowledge that the Guru is imparting to the disciple is invaluable. It can't be measured in worldly terms. Out of love and respect for the Guru, the disciple takes gifts and presents which are very pleasing to the Guru. Acharyaya priyam dhanamahritya prajatantam mavyavachetsi. Taittiriya Upanishad, the convocation address when the disciples are leaving the Gurukula after study for 14 years or 15 years. The Guru tells them, give gifts to the Guru which are very pleasing to the Guru so that he can sustain himself. And the Guru Sishya Parampara should never be broken. The Guru Sishya Parampara is as sacred as Santana Santati, children and grandchildren and their children. The knowledge is continuously being imparted. The Guru will impart it to his disciples, the disciples will impart it to their disciples, and so on. Unbroken chain of the Guru Sishya Parampara. That is what has been sustaining this Vedic Parampara, the Upanishadic Parampara, the great Vedic wisdom. Even now, to the present day, this wisdom is coming down in the Guru Sishya Parampara. Shrotriya Brahmanishtha Paramakarunika. He is sinless, avrajana, akamahata. Not swayed by small desires. What are they? Akama hata. Kama, desire. Hata, killed by desire. What are they? One is desire for fame, for name, for being known as a great guru, and desire for being recognized as a great guru and being applauded by the disciples, and commercial gain is the worst. In the Guru Gita, it is mentioned, even in the ancient times, there have been gurus whose eyes are always on the purse of the disciple. How much money I can extract from this disciple. Guru Gita says, Guravo bahavas santi sishya vittapaharakaha durlabhoyam guror devi sishya chittapaharakaha. So many gurus are there who want to rob the disciple of his or her wealth. Rare indeed is the guru who wants to rob the disciple of the great affection that he has. His chitta, his heart, is stealing away the heart of the disciple, and the disciple's heart is full. He wants to give it away to the guru out of great respect and affection. So Yajnavalkya, being the head of a great Gurukula, he needed a lot of money, support. Whenever he was in dearth of wealth, cows in those days, cows were great wealth. So he would go, Yajnavalkya, and Yajnavalkya will gift him cows. Sahasram dadami, that's the statement. I will give you 1,000 cows. The great debate in Yajnavalkya's court, where Yajnavalkya was challenged by several other rishis. Janaka assembled so many rishis of great repute and wisdom, and suddenly a desire arose in the king's mind. Who among these is the greatest knower of the Vedas, Brahmishta, the greatest of the rishis? Then he kept a gift, 1,000 cows and a huge amount of gold attached to the horns of each of these cows, and announced in the kingdom, in the court, whoever amongst you is the Brahmishta, the best of the Vedic scholars, can take these cows. Who will dare to say that I am the greatest? Nobody dared to get up and announce himself as the best. So Yajnavalkya, it is said, smartly got up and did not claim to be the best. Look at the interesting turn of events. He quietly told his disciple Samashrava, "Oh Samashrava, take these cows home." Then immediately there is a furor. People are up in arms. From Brahmishtosi, are you Brahmishta, you Yajnavalkya? You dare to take away these cows? Are you the best knower of the Vedas? Yajnavalkya humor. These rishis are so humorous and so happy. Yajnavalkya in such serious subjects. Yajnavalkya said, Namo vayam brahmisthaya kurmaha. I am bowing down to the greatest Vedic scholar amongst you, but I need those cows. Gokama vayam. Then they went on challenging him one by one by one. That debate in Janaka's court is one of the most fascinating portion of Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad. Now the Yajnavalkya tells Maitreyi and Katyayani, his two wives, and he tells them, O Maitreyi, O Katyayani, I am now going to renounce the world. I am tired of it. And I am going to distribute my wealth amongst you and make a final settlement. This is Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad, Chaturthodhyaya, Panchama Brahmana, 4.5, first to fifth mantra. And it goes on. Chapter 4, section 5, 4.5. I will read out and chant the original and then give the translation basing on Swami Nikhilananda's translation. Swami Nikhilananda ji was a disciple of Sharada Devi, the Holy Mother, the holy spouse of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. And he translated all the Upanishads with notes based on Shankara's commentary. And he has published 4 volumes. Those of you who want to have some acquaintance of the Upanishads in English, simple, lucid, readable, understandable English, please do go through these 4 volumes of Swami Nikhilananda. These have been published by the Advaita Ashrama, the Mayavati at the Himalayas, by the Ramakrishna Math. अथ याज्ञवल्क्यस्य द्वे भार्ये बभूत्वतुः मैत्रेयी च कात्यायनी च तयोर्हमैत्रेयी ब्रह्मवादिनी बभूव स्त्रीप्रज्ञैव तर्हि कात्यायन्यथः याज्ञवल्क्योऽन्यद्वृत्तमुपाकरिष्यन्. Maitreyi said, Yajnavalkya, I am now going to renounce this life. Let me make a final settlement between you and Katyayani. Maitreyi ti hovacha Yajnavalkyaha pravrajashyan va arehamasmat sthanadasmi hantate naya Katyayanyantam karavaniti. I am going to distribute my wealth because you too will be the heirs to my wealth. I am not taking anything from you. I am now going for pravrajana. Pravrajana is a very important concept in ancient Vedic times, which is now called sannyasa. It is not called sannyasa in the olden times. It's called pravrajana. Pravrajana means going forth. You give up all that you have, your old attachments, your friends and relatives and your parents and your money, your wealth, your bank balance, your credit card and your mobile phones. And you walk away in the wilderness in search of the divine. Most of them, after having awakened their consciousness, want to live alone, intensify their tapasya, their penance, in order to accumulate spiritual power, which should be then imparted to society at large. So you need power, spiritual power, not ordinary power. Intellectual power, physical power, these mean nothing. Bahubala, the muscle strength, physical strength, Buddhi Bala, the intellectual power, both of them pale into insignificance before the Atma Bala. Adhik balam, Kshatra balam, Brahmatejo balam balam. The statement made by Vasishtha to Vishwamitra. What is the use of your Bahubala, Kshatra Bala, power of the military, power of money, power of the muscles? This is the glory of India. The kind of power which India possesses, the resilience. When all the countries were collapsing under this deadly, terrible nightmare of COVID-19 pandemic, India stood because of the spiritual strength which it had. We know that The power of the muscle and the power of money and the power of the intellect mean nothing. The spiritual power which our rishis have accumulated, hundreds of thousands of them, over millennia upon millennia, the accumulated treasury of the spiritual forces. This is still sustaining India. So Pravrajana, he is moving around, he is going forth. Asmad sthanad asmi. So I want to make a settlement between you and Katyayani. Then Maitreya said, O my Lord, the Bhagavan, revered Sir, if all this wealth is full of money, the whole earth is full of wealth, it belongs to me, will it make me immortal through that? Can I attain immortality? Can I cross over the ocean of samsara? Can I break the bonds of death and life through this wealth which is ephemeral? Sahovacha Maitreyi Yannuma iyam bhago sarva prithvi vittena purna syat syam novaham tenamrito tenamritaho neti neti hovacha yagyavalkyo yathaivopakaranavatam jivitam tathaivate jivitag syadamritatvasya tu tatu nashasti vitte neti. Then Maitreya said, if the whole earth be full of wealth and it is mine, will I attain immortality through that? Will it make me immortal? No, replied Yagyavalkya. Your life would be just that, like that, the people who have plenty. Of immortality, however, there is no hope through ephemeral, transient, perishable wealth. And look at the response of this great wife. This is Indian wisdom. The wives and daughters, the women folk, they had so much of reverence for spiritual wisdom, and they acquired great wisdom. And the husband was the teacher of the wife. The father teaches the son. And the entire family, although appearing to be a family of household, is in fact a divine ashrama. Husband and wife and children, all of them are soaked in the divine presence, and they are pursuing this immortality as the goal. Sahovacha Maitreyi Yannuma iyam bhago sarva prithvi vittena purna syat syam maham tena mritoho neti neti hovacha yagyavalkyo yathaivopakaranavatam jivitam tathaiva te jivitag syadamritatvasya tu nashasti vitte neti. Then Maitreya says, bold utterance of this great woman. Sahovacha Maitreyi. Maitreya answers the husband. Yena hamna mritasyam kimaham tena kuryam yadeva bhagavan veda tadeva me bruhiti. Thereupon Maitreya said, what should I do with that which would not make me immortal? O my venerable sir, husband, of that alone which you know to be the only means of immortality, please teach me. The wife is asking the husband, requesting the husband, I do not want your perishable wealth which you accumulated. When you are going in search of immortality, in search of truth, in search of the divinity, in search of God, don't dump this perishable wealth upon me. Share with me, as your dear wife, that wisdom which you possess of the secret of immortality. What a noble society that we had in those days. Absolutely no greed for money, because this money is not going to make you immortal. The Kathopanishad says, the creator, the Swayambhu, has made all the senses outgoing. And therefore, all the senses are going out. The eye wants to see scenes. The ear wants to hear sounds, external sounds. The eye wants to have external scenes. The nose wants to have external fragrance to smell. The tongue wants to taste so many objects, external objects. And the skin is clamoring for touch. The corona pandemic has shown us how people are clamoring for touch, soft touch. Corona said strictly no. There is a shloka in the Mandukya Karika, which is a remarkable text by Gaudapada and the Mandukya Upanishad. There it mentions Asparsha Yogo Vainama. This yoga is called Asparsha Yoga, yoga of non-touch, no touch. So this non-touch yoga is called the Corona Yoga. COVID-19 yoga is Asparsha Yoga. Because you don't touch. Any kind of external touch only makes the mind and body weak and outgoing. And the body and the mind are clamoring. You see how people are having pets, cats and dogs, and fondling them, caressing them and hugging them, because you need some soft touch of the flesh so that you think you can be happy, and you degrade yourself more and more. These are very harsh facts. But this tiniest of the tiny COVID-19 corona has shown us how man will attain peace and joy by non-touch. Ehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkhayonaye vache adyantavanta kaunte yanateshu ramate buddha. Bhagavad Gita says, samsparshaja bhoga, these enjoyments which come through touch, they are dukkhayoni. They lead only to dukkha. Because they have beginning and end, and a wise man does not rejoice in that which gives you pleasurable touches. Sparshan kritva bahirbahyan chakshuschaivantare bhruvoho. The Bhagavad Gita. External senses should be externalized. What does it mean? The sound which is happening there far away, we pull that sound into the heart and try to listen. Let it be there where it is sounding. So the sparsha is the most dangerous, pleasurable sensation which ultimately ends in sorrow. Because when you have it, you feel pleasurable, and when it ends, you feel miserable. from pleasurable sensation to miserable feeling, you oscillate and your whole life is spent in crying and crying with some smiles in between. A pendulum, which is life, oscillating between a smile and a tear. That's our life. Ehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate. Bahyasparsheshvasaktatma vindatyatmanayat sukham. Bahyasparsheshu asaktatma. The person who is not attached to external touch. Atmani sukham vindati. He realizes great joy in his own self within. These are great truths in our Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. So Yajnavalkya, wanting to give his wealth to Katyayani and Maitreyi, his two dear wives, gets a rebuttal from Maitreyi. I don't want your wealth. Will it make me immortal? No. Paranchikhani vidrinat swayambhus tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman kaschidhira pratyagatmanamaikshat avritta chakshura amritatvamichan. Kathopanishad. The Swayambhu, the Creator God, the great Lord, has made the senses outgoing. Tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman, and therefore they see outside, they move outside, they run outside, they rush for external sensations, and they do not see the antaratma, the self within, which is the source of bliss. Kaschid dhiraha, somewhere some dhira. Dhira means dhi yukta, dhi sampanna, dhiman, dhimati. Ra pratyaya is equal to matu pratyaya, possessing, having a dhi. What is dhi? Dhi is viveka. A person having viveka is called a dhiman, dhimati, dhira. Somewhere some dhira, a person endowed with viveka, pratyagatmanam aikshata. He sees the pratyagatma. Aikshata means pashyati, he sees. Although it is the past tense, it is the present meaning. Why? Avritta chakshuhu amritatmamichan. Why does he turn all his senses inward to see the supreme reality? Amritatmamichan, desiring immortality. So here is a great woman, Maitreyi, who says, what will I do with that wealth through which I cannot get immortality? Then look at Yajnavalkya's reply. Oh Maitreyi, you have been so dear to me. I have loved you so much all my life. But now my love for you is increased thousandfold because of your deep desire to know about immortality. See, look at the society. The husband is feeling greatly rejoicing in the wife rejecting ephemeral wealth, pleasures, and praying to the husband, the illumined husband, the Rishi Yajnavalkya, to teach her the way to attain immortality. This was India. Even now, there are people who hold on to this. Sahovacha Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya then said, Priya vai khaluno bhavati sati priyam avridadhan tatarhi bhavatyedad vyakhyāsyāmite vyachakshanasya tume nididhyāsasveti. O Maitreyi, my dear, you have been my beloved even before, and now you say that you want to attain immortality and you want to learn the path to attain immortality. And what you say is so dear to me. This theme of attaining immortality. Come, sit down. I will explain it to you. As I go on explaining it, meditate. Deeply think about what I say. Nikhilanji writes, perhaps based on Shankara's commentary, Bhashya, those who merely recite the Vedas without understanding their meaning are compared to lifeless pillars who bear the weight of the roof. The pillars which bear the weight of the roof, they understand nothing. Or just as a donkey bearing a bundle of sandalwood, Chandana Bharavahi. Chandana Bhara, a huge load of sandalwood a donkey is bearing, and he has known nothing about the fragrance of the sandal. Knows its weight, only the Bhara, and does not know the fragrance of the Chandana, sandal. So is a Brahmin who knows the text of the scriptures but not their significance. He has memorized the text, he goes on repeating them. A Brahmana or a Vedic scholar, or in the modern times, all these great scholars who know so much can write learned papers in Vedanta and Brahma Sutra, but how much of that they have absorbed? Sri Ramakrishna used to compare these great pundits, scholars, to vultures, shakuni, who fly so high in the sky, but their eye is constantly on the carrion in the cremation ground where dead bodies lie, and they come down like in a lightning speed and take that carrion and walk and fly away. However high you may fly, if your mind is only on worldliness, acquisition of wealth, enjoyment, then you are like the vulture soaring high in the sky. So he says, Nididhyasasva. Meditate, carefully listen, absorb the teaching which I am going to give you. Then comes this immortal teaching. How do you know the self? How do you know the Atman? How do you know Brahman? You know it as your own self. The argument which is given here in the Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad is not only philosophical but highly psychological. You should remember, these great Upanishads are not mere philosophical, polemical texts which give you pleasurable feeling when discussed. It tickles your intellect. No. These great texts are meant to awaken your inner consciousness and make you aware of the purpose of human life as the realization of the supreme reality, Brahman, which is your own Atman, Atma Brahma Aikya, which Shankara repeatedly says in his commentaries in the Bhashyas. This is the purpose. It is not for Vinodana, pleasurable sensation. Vag Vaikhari Shabdachari Shastra Vyakhyana Kaushalam Bhuktaye Natu Muktaye. Shankara Vekachudamani, Vag Vaikhari, wonderful commentaries. Your speech is so wonderful. Shabda Chari, choice of words, the way you throw ideas. Shastra Vyakhyana Kaushalam, the skill by which you explain the meaning of the scriptures, the Upanishads and the Gita. All of them are simply trash unless it is backed up by spiritual realization. Bhuktaye natu muktaye. These can give you some intellectual enjoyment, tickling, what Swami Vivekananda called once as intellectual opium eating. Just like you take a piece of opium or a drink and you feel some tickling, and so you feel dizzy and some kind of elevation of the mind, some pleasure. So intellect is also like that. Some people go on reading and they find great joy in the intellectual. But what is the use of that unless it leads you to immortality? If you can't face life squarely, fear of death, fear of illness, fear of calamity, the whole world is collapsing. And what is the use of all your intellect if you can't really face it? That's why Shankara has a very small, wonderful stotra. He saw an old man, maybe an octogenarian or nonagenarian, memorizing the Vyakarana Sutras of Panini, Ashtadhyayi and Dhatu Patha, Dukrinkarane. Then the Acharya was filled with compassion and said, this man is just about to leave this world. Nothing is going to take away from him with him. Everything will be ended. Your wealth, your possessions, your knowledge, everything is going to end, at least at the time of death. Have you prepared yourself to face it fearlessly and happily? Are you aging gracefully? People are so much afraid of old age and disease and death. Then Acharya started singing, oh old man, Mudhamate, oh stupid fellow, call upon God, call upon God. When death comes and seizes you by the collar, this Dukrinkarane, memorizing and studying these intellectual books, is not going to save you anymore. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale, Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrinkarane. Such a simple verse. Even a child can understand the meaning. So profound and so poignant. With so much of feeling and compassion, the Acharya is singing, oh Mudhamate, call on God, call on God. Life is ebbing away. Then you have, just now we had the beginning of 2020. So much of vision, so many books were written. Vision 2020. I sarcastically think. And then Mahamaya, as Atimari, this pandemic, Corona must have been smiling in its sleeves. When books are being written and debates and symposia are being organized, Vision 2020. Corona must have been smiling. Let us see what happens. All your hopes are smashed. You see darkness everywhere. Can you face it? Face it solidly, smilingly, because you know that you are that immortal self. That's why call in the God in the Bhakti Shastra and awaken your own inner self in the Jnana path. Seek something which is higher, which is immortal, which is imperishable, which is eternal. Now, he is trying to explain the truth of Atman, the Supreme Self, through a very, very interesting psychological approach. The approach is, what is it that is beloved of you? What is it you like most? The characteristic of the self, the Atman, characteristics have been beautifully enunciated through a principle called the principle of generalization. Our great rishis went about their quest for the supreme truth based upon three fundamental principles which are not only philosophical, metaphysical, spiritual, but they are also extremely scientific. The principle of generalization is one principle based on which they discovered the Atman has a characteristic which is universal. The principle is very simple. Even in science, we go by that principle. The particular has to be referred to the general, general to the more general, and the most general, which is the universal. That is the generalization principle. Newton saw an apple was falling down. He did not treat it as an individual, isolated incident, but he related this to a larger phenomenon of falling, objects getting attracted to each other, and discovered a universal principle of gravitation. How do you generalize? Human mind wants to find unity. All of us are participating in this webinar on Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad. I am speaking, all of you are listening. Who are we? We are people from India. Somebody is in West Bengal, somebody may be in some other state. But apart from what we are, we can reasonably say that we are Indians. But what about people who are listening from other countries in the world? People from Europe, people from America, people from Russia. Then you say, we are human beings. That's a reasonably good generalization. But what about the cats and the dogs, which also form part of creation? Creation cannot leave out these beings also. So many subhuman beings. Cats and dogs and snakes and animals and plants, fishes. What about them? You call it living beings. That's a reasonably good generalization. Then what about these dull, dead matter, which are non-living, supposedly? Assuming that they're non-living, we do not exactly know what is life and non-life, as Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose demonstrated. So these non-living beings also should be accommodated. How is it possible to accommodate them? You say, instead of saying human beings, living beings, you say just being. Is it good enough? Of course, yes. Being is the fundamental characteristic of everything in this universe. It is. In Sanskrit, it's called asti, sat. Now that which is asti, sat, reveals itself. As consciousness is the capacity to reveal itself. It doesn't need any other consciousness to reveal it. Suppose you have light, darkness, you bring light to reveal the objects there. What is required to reveal the light of the light? No other light is required to reveal the light of the light, because itself is light. In the same way, consciousness, the asti, has to be the light of consciousness so that it can reveal everything, and it is self-revealed. It's called in Sanskrit, Swayam Prakasha Jyoti. It is not the Jyoti which is the ordinary Jyoti, like the Chandra Jyoti and Surya Jyoti, the light of the sun and the moon and the stars and the Agni, the fire. It is the light of the Atman, and It is the light of the Atman which gives light to everything. Tameva bhantamanu bhati sarvam tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. Mundaka Upanishad and Kathopanishad, both of them have this verse. This is the light which reveals. So, this Atman, which is Asti or Sat, is also Bhati or Chit. It is existence, it is awareness. And it is self-awareness. So, it reveals everything. So, how does it reveal itself? Self-awareness, that is awareness of existence, is bliss. Think about this carefully. You're just sitting quietly, facing the Himalayan ranges. Nobody is around you. It's so still, so calm, so beautiful, so cool. And you are just alone in your own company. You know I exist. And the awareness that I exist, the awareness of existence gives you great joy. The joy of awareness of existence is called Ananda. It's called Priya. Sat Chit Ananda, existence, awareness, and bliss are also called in Sanskrit Asti, Bhati, Priya. Asti, existence, Bhati, self-revelation, Priya is the dearness, belovedness. Any kind of priyatva, dearness, belovedness comes from the Atman. This you should be very carefully analyzing and understanding, particularly in this COVID situation. What is the most beloved thing that you have? I'll ask you a simple question. Suppose you say, now lockdown has been lifted, things are becoming fairly normal, coming back to normalcy. I'm tired, I'd go somewhere. I want to have a holiday. Are you going alone? No, I'm taking my wife along, my children along, my companions, my friends. Well, somebody says, no, I am just going alone. Then you ask him or her, are you taking yourself with you? Then they will think that you are not mentally well. What do you mean? I am taking myself? How can I go without myself? So that one entity, which is yourself, is your constant companion. I can go away from everybody, from everything, but I can't move away from my own self. Myself will always be with me wherever I am, whatever I do, in waking state, in dream state, in deep sleep state. All the time I am with me. That inseparable existence which is always there with me, which is me, is the most beloved. Who do you call beloved? Oh, she is so beloved of me. Oh, this boy, I can't live without him. You see the scenes of romance in the modern world. I can't be separated from him or her. And the mother tells the child, oh, you're going far away, but I can't bear your separation. I will come with you. So that is the most beloved from which you can't be separated. What is it from which you can't be separated? Who is your inseparable companion? Which is me. I am my inseparable companion, and therefore I am my most beloved. Simple logic. If anything happens to me, I immediately react. But this I is difficult to locate. What is the I? Where is it located? You ask somebody, are you well? No, I have not been feeling well. I have a terrible toothache. I am well, but my tooth is not well. But I identifies itself with the teeth and then says, I am not well. Are you well? No, I have a terrible backache. I am well, but my back is not well. I identify myself with the back. So the I identifies itself with the body, with the senses, the indriyas, and going still subtler. Are you well? Oh no. See that fellow? In the presence of everybody, he insulted me. He exposed me. And my reputation has been damaged. I am not at all feeling well. I feel so deeply hurt. I'm wounded. My mind is not well. My mind is agitated. So why should I say I am not well? Because I identify myself with the mind. I write a book. Usually it's very easy nowadays to write books because with the Google guard, cut and paste and produce a book. You compile from various sources, write your big name there. And sometimes people say I'm highly analytical, logical, systematic presentation. Somebody asks you, you're not feeling well, why? I asked that fellow, how do you like my book? He says, horrible. I got so angry. I spent 10 years researching on this book. This fellow, stupid fellow, doesn't understand anything of the worth of my book. So immediately you react, you flare up, you become terribly upset. What happens there? You are identifying with the intellect. The I is identifying itself with the intellect. So the I is identifying itself with the body, with the senses, with the mind, with the intellect, and still deeper and deeper and deeper. So what is the I? Is it the mind? Is it the body? Is it the intellect? Immediately I go to sleep. I'm tired, I go to sleep. Then you feel bliss. You don't know anything. That means the I is temporarily hooking on to the various components of myself called the body and the senses and the mind and the intellect. But the I itself is not all this. Now, if you remove this peg, this hook on which it is hanging, and isolate this I from its hooking on to the body, to the senses, to the mind, to the intellect, the I will die. This is the secret of spiritual sadhana. Chase the I. Oh, don't identify with the body. Go deeper. It'll go to the mind. It'll go to the intellect. It'll go here and there. The I will refuse to die and therefore hangs on to some peg or the other. And I pegs to so many things through relationship. If I hang on to something, I should say it is mine. Relationship is sambandha, and shashti Sixth case is used for Sambandha, and therefore aham and mama. In Sanskrit we call ahankara and mamakara, the I and the mine. Every spiritual scripture of every religion talks only about how the I and the mine can be eliminated, destroyed. Christianity, for example, the cross which we have is the I cross. Cross the I. Eliminate the I. Destroy the I. There are two ways of doing it. In the case of bhakti, you surrender to the Divine Supreme before the extraordinary majesty of the Supreme Reality, the infinite and the absolute, His majesty and the glory of God. Your puny I is so insignificant, it is as if it is non-existent. It simply reduces itself to shunya, or void, and vanishes. In the path of jnana, knowledge, you realize this I is so vast, not the ego, but the Atman, of which the ego is a pale shadow. This is so vast and infinite and absolute that you have no fear. Girish Chandra Ghosh, the famous poet and dramatist of Bengal, compared Swami Vivekananda and on the one hand, and Durgacharan Nag, a famous householder disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, on the other hand. And he said, Mahamaya, the world enchantress, wanted to ensnare two people, could not succeed. One was Swami Vivekananda, other was Durgacharan Nag. Durgacharan Nag became so small, so insignificant, erased himself completely and escaped through the small crevice of the net. The net could not contain him. He simply escaped, becomes so small. Can a net ensnare air, for example, wind, for example? No. And Swami Vivekananda became so big, so vast, that the net couldn't contain him. One is Purna, infinite, the other Shunya, void. And it can be mathematically proved the Shunya and Purna are the same thing. This is the question which has been raised. Such a high philosophical thing has been put in a purely psychological language in Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad. Yajnavalkya teaching Maitreyi, his beloved wife. Oh Maitreyi, look at the idea of Priyatva. Where does the Priyatva, dearness, come? So and so is dear to me, such and such thing is dear to me. All dearness and belovedness comes from the belovedness of the Atman. The Atman is dear everywhere, wherever you see Ananda is a particle of the bliss of the Atman. It is the bliss of the Atman, the Ananda of the Atman, which manifests as the Priyatva, as the Ananda, as the joy in the worldly life also. He says, oh dear Maitreyi, it is not for the sake of the husband that the husband appears to be beloved of the wife, but for the sake of the self, which is identical with the Supreme Self. This Atma, mentioned in the Bṛhadāraṇyaka Upaniṣad, can be taken as the individual self, as Shankara has put it, and Shankara will also say this is identical with the Supreme Self. Swami Vivekananda translates it as the Supreme Self. Everything in this world becomes beloved of me because I find joy in my own self. They are reflections of my own self. I'll just chant this remarkable passage in original Sanskrit. It is so elevating to even to hear and to chant. Sahovācana vā are patyuk kāmāya patipriyo bhavatyātmanastu kāmāya patipriyo bhavatina vā are jāyāyai kāmāya jāyā priya bhavatyātmanastu kāmāya jāyā priya bhavatina vā are Putranam kamaya putrah priya bhavantyatmanastu kamaya putrah priya bhavanti nava are vittasya kamaya vittam priyam bhavatyatmanastu kamaya vittam priyam bhavati nava are Pashunam kamaya pashavah priya bhavantya manastu kamaya pashavah priya bhavanti nava are brahmana kamaya brahma priyam bhavatyatmanastu kamaya brahma priyam bhavati nava are kshatrasya kamaya kshatram priyam bhavatyatmanastu kamaya kshatram priyam bhavati nava are lokanam कामाय लोकाः प्रिया भवन्त्यात्मनस्तु कामाय लोकाः प्रिया भवन्ति न वा अरे देवानां कामाय देवाः प्रिया भवन्त्यात्मनस्तु कामाय देवाः प्रिया भवन्ति न वा अरे वेदानां कामाय वेदाः प्रिया भवन्त्यात्मनस्तु कामाय वेदाः प्रिया भवन्ति न वा अरे भूतानां कामाय भूतानि प्रियाणि भवन्त्यात्मनस्तु कामाय भूतानि प्रियाणि भवन्ति न वा अरे सर्वस्य कामाय सर्वं प्रियं भवत्यात्मनस्तु कामाय सर्वं प्रियं भवत्यात्मा वा अरे द्रष्टव्य श्रोतव्यो मंतव्यो निदिध्यासितव्यो मैत्रेयात्मनि खल्वरे दृष्टे श्रुते मते विज्ञाते इदगम सर्वं विदितम्. This is a very elevating passage. I read out the translation of Swami Nikhilanandaji. Then Yajnavalkya said, verily not for the sake of the husband, my dear, is the husband beloved. He is loved for the sake of the self, which is its true nature, is one with the Supreme Self. Verily not for the sake of the wife, my dear, is the wife loved, but she is loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of the sons, my dear, are the sons loved, but they are loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of wealth, my dear, is wealth loved, it is loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of the Brahmin, my dear, is the Brahmin loved, he is loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of the Kshatriya, my dear, is the Kshatriya loved, but he is loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of the worlds, my dear, are the worlds loved, but they are loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of gods, my dear, are the gods loved, but they are loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of beings, my dear, are the beings loved, but they are loved for the sake of the self. Verily not for the sake of all, my dear, is the all loved, but it is loved for the sake of the self. Verily, my dear Maitreyi, it is the self that should be realized, should be heard of, should be reflected upon and meditated upon. By the realization of the self, my dear, through hearing, reflection and meditation, all this becomes known. This again is a very important lesson we get from the Upanishad. What is that by knowing which everything can be known? This is the principle of unification. The principle of unification says, is it possible to derive all multiplicity as manifestations of one supreme principle, as reflections of the sun in so many parts? There are 10 parts filled with water, and the sun is reflected in all of them, and his reflections are of the one sun. So the entire world of multiplicity can be derived, is derivable as reflections of that one supreme self in the antakarana, the inner organ, in the mind, the chitta, of the various selves. It's called the pratibimba, the images, the reflections. Abhasa, images. And The individual self may therefore be called Chidabhasa. In the Antakarana, the Chit has been reflected. There are no many at all. It appears to be many because there are innumerable reflections. One supreme reality is manifesting as the many. Agniryathayiko bhuvanam pravishto rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva ekastata sarvabhutantaratma rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa vayuryathayiko bhuvanam pravishto rupam rupam pratirupo babhuva ekastata sarvabhutantaratma rupam rupam pratirupo bahischa. Kathopanishad. Just like the fire entering into the various aspects in the world, sometimes it manifests as a fire in the cooking oven, sometimes it manifests as a light, sometimes it manifests as a AC, sometimes it manifests as a heater. Hundreds of varieties the Agni is manifesting. Similarly, the Atman entering into the world of beings and manifesting as a variety, ultimately it is one, and it is also unmanifest beyond manifestation. It is not that the manifestation of God or the Atman exhausts God. This is a very important point to remember. This is the difference between Vedanta and pantheism. Pantheism is a philosophy which says God has become this world and God is therefore exhausted. Just like you have some wood, you make some tables and chairs, and where is the wood? Wood has been converted into tables and chairs. The wood is now exhausted. Wood is no longer there. Is it like that? No. It manifests in the entire world as various beings and variety, but still its nature is unmanifest, integral, unbreakable, akhanda, indivisible whole is retained. This is the beauty of Vedanta. It remains in its supreme glory and chooses to manifest. The variety is ultimately not real, but the one alone is real. This is Advaita Vedanta. Buddha said, variety is what you see and analyze the meaning of this variety. Ultimately, the ego is unreal, which sees all this variety, and the ego is smashed and known to be unreal. What is revealed. Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, as Vivekananda himself said, have proved that the one and the many are one and the same thing, appearing at different times and in different attitudes, seen as the many or the one. It is not that one and the many are contradictions. It is the one which has manifested as the many. The manifestation, it can be called the many, but ultimately it is one. It's called Ekatva Vijnana. The example given in the Chandogya Upanishad. You take some mud, out of mud you create so many different images. The Durga Puja, for example, in Bengal, we create an image of Durga, image of Kartikeya, image of Ganesha, image of Lakshmi, image of Saraswati, image of Mahishasura, and you have a grand worship and puja. And the 10th day and the Dashami day, Vijaya Dashami, the entire thing is immersed in water and it melts away back as mud. Suppose you ask somebody, oh, has it been immersed? Oh, yeah. Quickly go and bring some Durga mud, some Lakshmi mud, or Saraswati mud. Can you bring it? No. Mud is mud. It was called Durga, it was called Lakshmi, it was called Saraswati, it was called Kartikeya, it was called Ganesha, because the mud assumed that form and were called by that name. So the difference between one image and the other image is only in name and form, called Nama Rupa. When Nama Rupa is eliminated, what remains is Satchidananda Asti Bhati Priyatva, which is your own self. It is the Nama Rupa which is responsible for this world. One of our acharyas in the Prasakshana Kendra training center, Swami Mukhanji, used to give us a beautiful example. Have you seen the ocean? The sea? Yes, of course. Have you seen a wave? Yes. That day I went to the beach and I pictured a selfie. I am standing by the side of a wave and the wave is rising like that. Is the wave real? Yes, I saw it. I captured it on my camera. Oh, is it so? Is it real? Yes. Bring a wave. You say it is real. Bring a wave. Can you bring a wave? No. You can only bring water. So wave is real in a sense when it appears with the name and form of a wave, but ultimately it's only water. Water manifesting as a wave with the name wave and with the form of a wave is called a wave or a taranga. It's only water. Just like mud shaped into various images is called by the name of the image. Similarly, water has been shaping itself as a wave. Ultimately, it's water. Ultimately, it's mud. Suppose you make so many ornaments of gold. You have a golden ornament which you wear as a necklace, which you wear as a bangle in the hand, which you wear in the feet as decorative ornament. You wear as a ring in your finger. So all these various ornaments which you wear are made of gold, but they are called by different names. The ornament which is meant for the necklace, you don't wear in the feet. The ornament which is meant for the ring in a finger, you don't put it on your ear. So as long as the name and form of the ornament exists as reality, it has a particular functionality. Exactly the same way Advaita Vedanta says, the Upanishad says, it is practically possible to use them as long as you have the sense of the I or the ego. So don't say it is unreal, because you have to live with it. With the rice, you cook so many kinds of food, rice pulao and rice khichdi and all that. It's the same rice, but as long as you taste it differently, you have a different name and different form. But ultimately, no, it's the same, it's the one. So the variety is not completely unreal, nor is it completely real. So it's called mithya. So it is a mixture of reality and non-reality. It's called Maya. Maya is not unreality. The modern word which Corona has given us is virtual reality. I am talking to you and you're listening to me through technology. Is my talk real? Is your presence real? Of course, yes, I'm talking. It's live conversation going on. What is live? I'm seeing you. I'm able to listen to you. You are seeing me or listening to me. Is it real? Of course, yes. Is it really real? No, it's a kind of reality which is not fully real. So it is not real, nor is it unreal. You call it virtually real, virtual reality. Maya is virtual reality. From the Corona, we got this word, translation of Maya, which was wrongly translated as unreal. But now Corona has taught us it is virtual reality. The whole world is a virtual reality. So the belovedness which you find, the joy which you find the husband or the wife or the children, in your money, in your wealth, in your position, and all that which is beloved of you, actually the belovedness of the Atman which is manifesting. So the only joy is the joy of the Atman, the bliss of the Atman, the priyatva of the Atman. Now, if you rise to a level in which you go deeper and deeper into your own consciousness and eliminate the nama rupa, name and form, then what remains is only joy, pure, unalloyed joy with no names and forms and varieties. What is that state? That is the state in which every one of us goes during deep sleep. Forget samadhi, forget higher states of consciousness. Just think of this daily experience. Why is it so much of joy in sleep? Everybody wants to go to sleep to forget your misery. Oh, I'm so tired. I'm so miserable, I want to sleep now. Why? Because the variety gives you misery. When the variety goes away, Namarupa goes away, you have only bliss. Joy, pure joy, unalloyed joy, for which there is no opposite. It is not the opposite of sorrow, it is just pure, unalloyed joy. Atyantam sukhamashnute. The Gita calls it Atyanta Sukha. Atyanta means full, complete, unalloyed. Beyond joy and sorrow. This Atyanta Sukha is attainable when all variety in the form of name and form is eliminated. So it's Prajnana Ghana. When the Prajnana Ghana, consciousness is not focused. When consciousness is outwardly focused, is in the waking state. Consciousness is inwardly focused, you get the dreaming state. And consciousness is just unfocused. Neither dream nor waking is mass of consciousness, unfocused. This is a deep sleep. You get so much of joy in deep sleep, you get so relaxation. What relaxes you? Anything which is beyond relativity and variety and namarupa is so relaxing. That's why there's a technique was developed. If you can, in the midst of tremendous activity, quickly lapse into yourself for a couple of seconds and go to induce sleep, as it were, completely eliminate all variety, just for a microsecond, immediately get so much fresh. Just for a few seconds, you eliminate variety, go deep into yourself. This can be practiced. This can be done. It's easily doable. So let's make a habit of going back to our own Atman now and then, lapsing into the Atman because the most beloved, because of which we are now living in this world. That's the most beloved. Atmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavati. Since it's the most beloved, think of it, dream of it, meditate upon this. Atma avare drashtavya, shrodavyo mantavyo nididhyasitabhya. Atman has to be realized, it should be listened to. Shrodavyo, just you are listening now. We are discussing this Atman. We are listening to this, listening to the great sages, Yajnavalkya and others. Mantavyo, reflect upon this. Think deeply about it. Nididhyasana means is translated in English as meditation, but it's much deeper than that. Nididhyasana is kind of samadhi. You got so much absorbed into it, you forget your mind and body. All variety is completely eliminated. Shrodavyo, mantavyo, nididhyasitabhya. Atma vare Shrodavyo Mantavyo Nitidhyasitavyaha. Nava are sarvasya kamaya sarvam priyam bhavatyatmanastu kamaya sarvam priyam bhavatyatma va are drashtavya shrotavyo mantavyo nididhyasitavyo maitreyatmani khalvare drishte shrute mate vigyata idag sarvam viditam. This is a great lesson which we get from Yagyavalkya Maitreya Samvada. The most beloved, which is your own self. Stick to it, go deep into it, dive deep into your own self. Be Atma Rama, sport in the self, rest in the self, Atma Krida, delight and sport in the self. Atmapriyananda, beautiful name which my Guru, out of sheer grace, gave me, of which I am not worthy, just to remind me that you have to become Atma Priya Ananda. The most beloved is your own Atman. Derive the Atman from within. Don't go out seeking pleasure. Dive deep into yourself. So Ramakrishna used to sing a beautiful song with which I'll end today's talk. Apunate apuni thekomon jeo namon karo ghore যা চাবি তা বসে পাবি খোঁজো নিজ অন্তঃপুরে আপনাতে আপনি থেকো মন. Oh mind, just stay put in your own self, the Antaratma, and don't go out seeking variety, seeking things of the pleasures of the senses outside. Whatever you need, whatever you will want, you will find within your own self. And search deep, dive deep into your own self. This is a great lesson, and this has to be practiced. These are not mere talks, these are not mere words, these are not philosophies, these are not metaphysics. This is a Brahma Vidya which is practicable, doable, and the simplest of all Vidyas, because it is the Atma Vidya, your own very self, which is the dearest of the dear. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
I extend my heartfelt gratitude to revered Maharaj for his enriching discourse. This talk will be premiered through YouTube tomorrow at 5 p.m. for the people who are unable to attend this lecture session. With the permission of revered Maharaj, I end this session.